So then we are back with more understanding from the time of the Second Tabernacle services, where we find in the Aramaic English translation of the word. This translation comes from the original manuscripts of the prophets of the Israelic lineage. So then we can understand the time of the end. As per YERSHIYAHU the prophet, we find a layer of understanding of the spring feast, the autumn feast, and also the returning of the cities of the Messiah laid waste for many centuries. While studying these holy documents, we must understand a fact, and the fact is the center point of this situation regarding the completion of the spring feast, obviously is the Messiah. He was under the constant guidance from heaven, and he had every step of his ministry being watched by the Torah and obviously from the words of YERSHIYAHU the prophet plus the layers of other prophets. Let's try to understand then the combat of the end and the way we should read the holy documents, as we have the example in Galah or Revelation, the 8th chapter. Let's first establish then where Yohanan was at. He was in the land of Cush. He was in Africa, in the northern side of Sudan, where then the first city of his time, or the starting of the 1,000 years of the Messiah in this earth, then had begun. So then, as he was there, we must find then a layer of understanding then in Daniel, where we are at then in Daniel 11:4. The other point is, as far as the combat is concerned, we find then another layer in Daniel the 12th chapter, where Daniel said at the end knowledge would increase for the purposes of trade. Daniel was a tradesperson. The core of the whole understanding for those who are saved and constantly studying the holy instructions, they must never deviate from the core of the objective of the prophecy. Firstly then, the objective of the prophecy is pointing the people back, so then they are on a path of salvation. Let's establish first then what Daniel mentioned regarding then at the end of the 1,000 years of Nehashatan, knowledge would increase, and sure it did. As the 1,000 years of Nehashatan has ended, then we must establish the time of the restoration period, where the remnant, those who are in the holy cities, then later are saved. The Gentiles are included, those Gentiles with tabernacling knowledge and understanding of the Holy Covenant, becoming the covenant with the Messiah as one, and at the same time serving him, as we read in YERSHIYAHU chapter 1:8, where you find then the service area being serviced by the Gentiles, where you read then the vineyards and your flocks would be taken care of by the Gentiles. These means salvation of the Gentiles, as long as they are productive, as long as they obviously are then producing fruit. It does not mean every person is going to be around the holy cities then taking care of the ground. That's not the point. Speaking of the Messiah, speaking of tabernacling, speaking of the Torah, understanding it is extremely important. As far as the combat, let's understand what it means then. The ships of Tarshish, then the ships of merchant ships in Galah, Revelation chapter 8, and then Kittin, the 11th chapter, where then the ships they return. We must understand also the understanding of the submarines. There is a section of it where we must then be very cautious how we read these holy documents, so then we are then permanently with the same understanding as far as its content and context of the restoration period. So then, let's read then what it means, Leviathan, where you find then in YERSHIYAHU, the 27th chapter. What does he mean? The monster, you find a situation where then Yohanan describes as the star coming down from heaven and exploding. He was observing then in the future the atomic bomb descending from heaven. So then, as he described a star coming down from heaven, a burning star, obviously he saw the rocket then described by Zechariah the 5th chapter, where then you find galal of 20 cubits and you find a galal of 10 cubits. Then we understand. So, he did not truly observe a star. He saw the atomic bomb. During his time, he saw and he wrote what he saw. It was not then for the prophet to understand what it meant. He was not to be explained that then the star coming down from heaven was a future weapon of a huge destruction. He was to describe what he saw. And he saw a star coming down from heaven, and obviously if you read Zechariah the 5th chapter, you find then galal or galals in English to make it easier so we can understand then both of them, 10 and 20, as plural. The same way when we read then the 27th chapter, we are reading sections of the autumn feast, the vengeance. Prior of the vengeance, you find sections of the restoration period. What does it mean then, the word Leviathan? It's not related with the sea monster. It is an understanding of wrath. It is understanding of what's coming. It is the understanding of then is coming in the future. Let's divide this situation in a couple of sections. The first, the prophet then felt, exercises the senses, as then YERSHIYAHU has mentioned, is extremely important. Gentiles, it is nearly not doable exercising the senses. It requires a direct relation with the holy cities as Gentiles during this time, in order for the senses of being then exercised. The Creator Yahweh has many names. Those names of the Holy Creator, they are senses. For instance, Yahweh of war, Yahweh then of peace, Yahweh then as a father, and so on and so forth. Each name of the Creator, that is a specific Hebrew word and a sense that goes along with it. Gentiles do not understand. The holy Hebrews, when they are then set aside for the first holy city and on the land of Cush, they wilt recuperate what they've learned centuries ago. These step-by-step sections and bits and pieces will be then given, so the Gentiles can in a tiny portion understand those holy senses later. Then let's try to understand Leviathan. If you read the 27th chapter, you find then the translator of YERSHIYAHU did not translate it properly. Let's try to separate so we can understand. When you read the 27th chapter, there is a section of it related with a dragon. There is a section of it where then beast is then the fugitive. The beast is the fugitive. The dragon is not. Dragon is precision. How can dragon be fugitive? You can make precision fugitive. What is fugitive is the beast. Let's try to understand then there is no deceit. because the time of deceit is gone. From 1009 to 2009, 6009 to 7009, the time of deceit is gone. We are speaking of precision. The Creator is the most precise. We understand tabernacling is perfect. The earth then is not. In terms of tabernacling, the earth is contaminated, is not perfect. The creation then is perfect because the Creator made it. But the condition as it is not. So then, when we read the 27th chapter of YERSHIYAHU, we understand then the serpent, we understand then dragon, and you understand then beast. Fugitive is the beast. Dragon is precision. And then comes serpent. Serpent, then a smart. Then you find wrath involved with it. If you understand then the lexicon, you find then the very origin of the word. You find it very interesting. You find then elongated as sea monster. You find then shipwreck. You find related with transportation. Shipwreck and transportation in Hebrew, they are related. Elongated, long, and under the water, as if you understand a serpent transporting underwater. The answer is then is final, is given then in Amos, the 9th chapter. When you read Amos, you will understand. When you begin to read then Amos, you find it very interesting, because comes a section of it where he then explains then these serpent or elongated transportation, then instructing underwater. What can you relate explaining then the war or the combat of the end, the anger that's coming in the future as far as the restoration period is concerned? Let's try to find these then in Amos. So then, we begin our quest. In this section then you find in the 3rd verse from the Hebrew. You have to understand, you read from the right to the left. So then, them take I and search, shalt I there from Carmel to the top, in the hiding are they, if and there from the sea, from under the sea, my eyes, though in front of me, yet concealed. What do we understand as far as warfare? This is directly related with the northern kingdom. If you read the 27th chapter of YERSHIYAHU plus the 9th chapter of Amos, it is directly related with the northern kingdom of Israel. Let's try to understand a situation. Northern kingdom related with the time of the restoration does not speak of Israel. It speaks of the Soviet Union, because we are related with the northern kingdom of the restoration period, known then as the base of the statue, where you find then the strong, the first, second, and third, kingdom of the east, kingdom of the north, and kingdom of the south. So then, we understand the submarine warfare is given then the northern kingdom. As we read and reread and read it again, you will understand word by word in Hebrew, and they are not interchangeable. Hebrew is a specific, liking it or not. Those words, they are obviously related with the 5 senses of the human beings. But then you have to understand a section where you have to unite then content and context based from what the Messiah had explained. He had taken those words from the prophets, and the Messiah made very specific. The Messiah did explain weapons of war. He did not go as far as explaining nuclear submarines, but he did explain of machines of unique forms, and he explained in such a vivid way. When then he was gone and he went up, the persecution was so extreme, then Yohanan ended up in Africa. Then we understand the Messiah truly, 100%, he explained so much of it, they couldn't bear. But we can understand even further. So then, let's read it again. From the 3rd chapter. There from the sea, under the sea, in front of my eyes, yet they are concealed. We are speaking of the sea monster. No, we are speaking of submarines. These are directly related with YERSHIYAHU, the 27th chapter. If you then place in your computer search, place Northern Kingdom and then sea monster, you precisely go then AMOS chapter 9, and then you find sections in Job or Job, and you find YERSHIYAHU, the 27th chapter. There is a section of it where then the war goes on, and during the time of Galah, the 8th chapter or Revelation, you find then the merchants of the earth. Then you find these submarines under the sea. Under the sea, and they are in line with the lust of her. You have to understand the spiritual side of it and the physical side of it. So then, we have the answer. The Northern Kingdom is then the main leader of the submarine warfare. This should be studied further, because China also is a very great power of the submarine warfare, and there is a relationship of both of them, but we understand from Daniel very precisely. Daniel 11, then 14. You find the Northern Kingdom shall come with much equipment. Until then, there is a relationship with China and the Soviet Union. We must understand this further and layer these understandings properly. Please stay tuned. Much more coming up.